Hello, class. In the last lecture, we talked about the Psalms and that there are hymns. That's the most common form of a psalm. There are praises, and then there are laments. One thing I mentioned in the last one was that in the beginning of the book, the way that they're structured, all 150 of them, the chapters begin with more laments and they end with more praises. Okay, they begin with more laments at the beginning of like Psalm 1 through whatever, and then by the time we get to Psalm 150, we have more praises than we have laments. Most of the Psalms, though, are a mix between laments and praises. They begin with some kind of cry out to God, a lament, right? And then they say, all right, God, you've heard my prayer. I praise you for responding to my cry. Okay. Today we're going to be getting into more specifics of the different types of psalms that there are. So for your project that was released yesterday, you'll notice that probably your psalm is going to fit in one of these categories. And so I want you to pay attention to that. So because part of your project here is going to be a reflection piece of that, right? So what does that mean to you? Not just how do you express it through your art, but what does it actually mean to you? And so by connecting to what kind of psalm it is, you'll be able to connect with a little bit more of that personal application of it, okay? Let's get into a few of these, all right? One of the first ones is called a song of thanksgiving. Sounds exactly what it means, right? If you think about Thanksgiving, like the meal, that day when you gather with a bunch of family around the table and eat turkey and all that, right? You're giving thanks for what you have in life, right? A lot of times on our table, we'll go around, maybe you do too, right? With your family, you go around and you ask everyone, what are you thankful for, right? That's exactly what a Thanksgiving psalm is about. Thanking God for life, for all the blessings that we have. Okay, so that's a very common form of a psalm. The next type is known as a royal psalm. When you think of royalty, think of like kings and queens and princes and princesses, right? Well, most of the psalms, a lot of them are actually addressed to the king. Now, just because they're written by the king, say like King David, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a royal psalm, right? He might be writing it to kind of, like I talked about with the hymns, they're written to like a larger group of people, typically, right? A royal psalm is really going to focus on what does it mean for the king specifically? Like this is a word just for the king, right? Or for leaders or in general. So those are royal psalms specifically focused to the king. Right? And it'll be obvious within the psalm, right? That it's like, all right, this is to the king of Judah. Here's the word that God wants you to hear, and that's the psalm, okay? So David does write some of these. Solomon writes some of these. Other kings write them as well. But not just because a king is writing it doesn't mean it's a royal psalm. The next type is a wisdom psalm. We've kind of talked about this a little bit before. A lot of time in biblical wisdom, we have a comparing and a contrasting, right? The ways of the godly are this, where the ways of the wicked are like this, right? That's a wisdom psalm. You're going to see a lot of contrasting sort of type of phrases, where one line will say, the way of this is this, right? The way of the wise is like this, to follow God's laws and decrees and commandments. The ways of the wicked, well, it does whatever our hearts desire, something like that, okay? So wisdom writings, or wisdom psalms, compare and contrast. The next one here is a psalm of trust, okay? A psalm of trust. When you think of something you trust, right? You have faith in that, right? And so these psalms of trust are focusing on God, especially in those darker times when you feel like all hope is lost and you're not sure where to turn to, and God is that constant thing that you trust in. The 23rd Psalm, right? It's oftentimes called that, not Psalm 23, but the 23rd Psalm. It has like its own name of us, right? So that is probably one of the most common ones, right? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, right? So trusting that God, even in those darkest times, is with you, right? That's a trust psalm. There are a few others, but those are the main ones we're going to cover, all right? So we've talked about a Thanksgiving psalm, right? Thanking God for all the goodness of life in general. There are royal psalms written to the king, specifically instructions for the king. There are wisdom songs comparing and contrasting good and evil, godly, wicked, all that. And then there are trust psalms, all right? And trusting that God will get us through. And so that's going to do it for now. Until the next one.